Hello everyone, today I'll show you how you can make a customizable modular character inside Unreal Engine 5.3. You can see into this character I can change different parts of the model and I still can play with the resulting combination of the parts. I'll show you how you can do a similar setup to this. So let's start with this task. Let's start with creating a project. Open the engine, go to the games category and choose the third person example. Add name for your project. We'll be using the blueprint type and click on the create button. After you have created your project, you can find in the characters folder the two character types that the Unreal Engine comes with, the old mannequin UE4 from Unreal Engine 4 and the new mannequins from Unreal Engine 5. They have a new skeleton. So in order for my character to be compatible with older versions and older animation packs, for example, from the marketplace, I will be using the UE4 skeleton to create my meshes for the character. So going inside the mannequin UE4 folder and into the meshes folder, you can find here the mannequin skeleton for the old version and the skeletal mesh that it's by default coming with the engine, this example mesh. You can export this skeleton and the mesh inside your modeling software and use the mesh as a reference to create your own characters. Bind them to the skeleton, apply weights, and then you need to import all the meshes inside the engine with this skeleton selected as their source skeleton. So make sure that you export this skeleton and use it in your modeling software. Don't change anything on the skeleton. You need to have all the bone names the same. Everything should be the same in the skeleton in order for everything to import correctly. Model your parts that you want to be interchangeable into different objects and apply them to the same skeleton. They should be separate models, but all should be binded to the same skeleton that you exported. So let's create a new folder here to be more organized. Let's call it Rider. And let's import here all the parts for my modular character. Drag all the files here into the folder. And for the import options, make sure that the skeletal mesh is marked, the import mesh field is marked. For the skeleton, we need to choose the skeleton from the UE4 folder. So if you hover on any of the skeletons, it will show you the path to this skeleton. I use this one from the old version to be more compatible with available packs on the marketplace with animations. So game characters mannequin UE4 meshes. Choose this skeleton. Unmark this import animations field, because if you used some keyframes to test your rigging into your modeling software, you don't want to include these animations here. So this should be unchecked. Into the material section, I'm choosing not to create materials and not to import textures. I'll be creating the materials myself into the engine. The other thing that we should consider is we want a physical asset from the default character to be used. So open this advanced section into the mesh type here. Go in the bottom of the advanced section and uncheck this create physical asset field. Instead of creating physical asset for each part of the mesh, just use the physical asset from the default character. And then click on the import all button. It will take some time and it will import all your different meshes. I have one mesh that it's combined with some of the modular parts just to use as a preview for animations and other stuff like this, I recommend you to do the same, because if you are previewing some animations and you only have the legs, for example, as it's in this jeans model, you cannot see properly the full animation. So do a one combined mesh and then all the parts as a separate models. For example, you can see here I have the combined character and I have some pants, for example, and different kind of pants. This will be the modular parts. We will be replacing the pants on the character with the different types that we have available. So let's delete everything from the scene. And if you go to the third person folder and the blueprints folder, here is the third person character that we are using when we are playing the game. So if you hit this play button, you are using this blueprint class to play the game. So open the class, and inside, if you go to the viewport, here into the components folder, you have a mesh, which is a character mesh type. And for the skeletal mesh asset, they have the queen simple mesh. Here, if you choose the combined mesh for your character, so let me show you this rider combined mesh. If I compile and save this character, if I hit play, now I'm playing with my character. It's currently not modular character, it's just the combined mesh. So let's start with the editing to make it a modular character. So go back into the blueprint, and here under this character mesh we'll create several other skeletal meshes. So select this mesh, add a new component, start typing skeletal, and this is the option that we need, skeletal mesh. So first we'll change our basic mesh not to be the combined mesh. We'll use the rider body mesh, because this will not be changing, it is our hands and feet. We'll be using this as a base model, and for each mesh that we're adding, we'll add different parts for the mesh. Let's go back here into the viewport and into the newly created skeletal mesh. I'll be using the head. So select again the base mesh, click on the add, type skeletal, then add some of the other parts, for example the shoes. Let's start naming our different meshes before we have too much of them to keep track. So this will be shoes, this will be head, then add another one, skeletal mesh, this will be gloves. So here choose the gloves, then add another one. For the knee pads, another one. This will be the bird. Add another for the mustache. You can see the character starts to be more detailed. Add another one. This will be our top part. Let's choose some of the meshes that we prepared for the top item of clothing. For example, this one. Let's add another for the pants and choose some of the pants that we prepared. Okay, so you can add as many pieces as you want. For each slot that you want to be able to customize, you need to add a skeletal mesh and you need to model different parts, rig them to the same skeleton and import as we did. Add them here and you'll be ready to go. So currently, if I compile and save this character and I go and hit the play button, everything on my character is stationary except the base mesh that we used for the body, which is the legs and the arms. Let's go back into the blueprint and now into the construction script for your character. We'll use the leader pose component to set up the animation for all of our parts. So into the construction script for your blueprint, drag out from this arrow and start typing leader pose. So choose set leader pose component for any of the items, let's say for the bird. So for the beard, we'll use the leader pose from our base body. So control click and drag the base mesh that we have set up as the body of our character, drag it into the construction script window, and then connect to the new leader bone component. So this is the leader bone that it will drive everything else. So we had the animation for the body playing into our game and we need to apply this animation to all other parts of the body. So start control dragging here all the parts of our body. Let's shift select all of them, control drag them here. I already have the bird, so let's delete it and connect everything here to the target of our leader pose component. And as a source, we have the first component that we have the animation blueprint applied, as it is set up by default into the third person character. So compile and save this. Let's go click play. Now we have our animation playing for everything except the top. I have forgotten to add this top. Let's control drag it here, add it to the target components, compile and save. And now I have my modular character animated. All of the parts are moving together and we are applying the proper animation to our character. Now let's go back here. I believe I also forgot this part, so now I have 8 components here and 8 here. Everything is set up. And now you'll need some type of way to change the actual component inside each of these fields in order to have your character customizable. The setup now is done in a way that you can edit each slot here into the editor. If I want to change my top from this jersey, for example, to the sweatshirt, I can change it here, compile and save. And then if I play the game, I'm using now this hoodie mesh instead of the jersey that we had before. But this is done in an editor, it's not controllable by the player. So how can you change your meshes inside the game? For example, if you click some button or if you interact in some way in your level with the objects, you pick up some object or something like this, you need to change the items in the game, not only in the editor. So let's do an example. For example, if you click some key to change some of the items, let's go into the event graph and let's create, for example, a key event. If you click the one key on the keyboard to be able to change, for example, your top, let's control drag here the top item. Let's drag from it and use the set skeletal mesh asset. So when we release the one key, let's change the top from the current sweatshirt that we have to this jersey, for example, instead. Let's compile and save this. Let's hit the play button. So now I have the hoodie item, and if I click the one key, I'm changing it to this jersey instead. So this is changing to a specific mesh, but if you want to go through all of the available meshes and just change to the next one, you can create some array with all the meshes that you can use for the top part, for example, and each time change them to the next available mesh and start from the beginning when you are already on the last mesh. So for this, let's create some variables. Let's create a new variable. Let's call it top mesh index. And let's change this to an integer. Let's create a new variable and call it top meshes, for example. And let's change this to a skeletal mesh component and change the type to an array. So this will be an array of skeletal meshes. Let's compile the blueprint. This will give you the option to add the default values for the variables that you created. So the default value for the index will be 0, and the top meshes array will create a couple entries. So actually it should not be a skeletal mesh component, it should be a skeletal mesh. Let's delete this and let's create a new variable, skeletal mesh, and it will be of type skeletal mesh. The skeletal mesh, not the component, but the actual mesh object reference, and it is an array type. Compile again, and now let's create 3 entries. Let's first use the hoodie, then the jersey, then the shirt, for example, and I have another jersey. So here into the brackets you can see the index for each of them. The default one will be the 0, the hoodie. Compile this and save. So instead of on clicking one, instead of changing every time to the specific mesh of this jersey like it's set up now, let's disconnect this by out-clicking on the link. Let's give us a little bit more space. Now, instead of changing to a specific mesh, let's control drag here the array with the meshes. Let's get a mesh from this array and let's connect this to the new mesh. Now, here this index, each time that we press the key, we'll want to change this index. So control drag this index here, then drag out from the index, type ++, and this will increment by 1 the index each time that we press the button. So we are starting with the default of 0. The first time that we press the key, it will add 1. So it will change to the next mesh if we connect it here and then set the mesh. So this get function will get the element with an index 1 and it will change the top skeleton mesh component here, this asset with the one with an index of 1 here into the skeleton mesh array. If we click it a couple of times, it will get to the end of the array, so you will get an error if you don't handle this situation. So let's do a branch node here, connect this increment value to the branch, then just check if the top mesh index is less than the length of our array. So control drag the array, get the length. So our current array has 4 elements. So if the index is less than the length of the array, so less than the array, it will be 0, 1, 2, and 3. If we are meeting this condition, we'll change the mesh to the proper index. If not, we need to do something else. We need to set the index to 0. And then after we set the index to 0, we will then change to the new mesh. Let's arrange this a little bit better to be more easy to understand. So each time we are changing the skeletal mesh asset to the top mesh index in this array. But if the index gets to a bigger value than the length of the array, we are changing to the first element by setting the index to 0. So let's compile this, let's save, and now if I hit play, if I click the 1 key, it will change to the next item in the array, which is this jersey. If I click the 1 key again, it will change to this shirt. If I click 1, it will change to the next jersey. And 1 again will change back to the first element of the array, which is this hoodie. So by clicking 1, I can go through all of the items into the list. You can do this for clicking of the key like I did in this example, or you can add it to some button in your user interface, or some event like picking up the item in the level. You can do it any way that you would like, but this is the basic setup of a modular character with a set of different items that you can change. In the runtime, in some other tutorial, I can show you how you can save the state of the array and the index into some save state that every time you load the game, it will load the character the last way that you left it. So guys, if you have any questions or any other request for tutorials, please write in the comments. If you like this, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.